2 recordings. So everything is on. I'm not used to recording on so much equipment, but hi everyone. Today is the second weekly episode of the Light Within Us, the new podcast I'm doing about being empaths and navigating and healing the world as empaths. For today's episode, I decided to also bring you a little video. If you're on my Substack, you're probably hearing the audio, and if you're on my YouTube or Instagram, you are most likely seeing the video. So wherever you are, whatever format you prefer, just stick with it. I have to say, I won't always do videos because they're exhausting, and I have another series of lives running these days, which are 30 days of live meditations. So I decided when I feel like it, I'm going to have a video for the podcast, but for now, they're mostly going to live in an audio format only, and that you can find on Substack. That said, last time we talked about being empaths, how hard or challenging it is sometimes to navigate our boundaries. And I was reading from this book. Well, now I have the video I can even show you. This is the book I was talking about in the last episode. It's called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And I also talked about some of the criticism about this book, but how it tends to have a very religious lens on things at times. But in terms of the content and what boundaries are explaining and bringing forth this understanding of boundaries, it's a really, really good reference point to have. And what we were also discussing in the last episode are particularly one Disney villain from the classic Disney cartoons. They used to be called cartoons back in the day. I mean, I'm in my 30s, and I ran a poll recently after I did that podcast on one of my channels, and I asked people if they've heard of this 1950s Disney classic Cinderella, if they watched it. There's a lot of people who have not watched it, who don't know what it is, and I was thinking, wow, I was born in 88, so I grew up watching the Disney cartoons. However, it's interesting how a lot of people haven't. But I wanted to continue that a bit just for fun and talk more about the classic Disney villains and how some of them are really textbook like malignant, evil, or narcissistic. And I thought that could be something fun that we can look at. However, first things first, we were discussing common boundary beliefs or beliefs that people have about boundaries. And if you've just joined me for the first time today, so what essentially are boundaries? We talked about our space, so my space and your space, and there's imagine a line stretching out between these two spaces, and that line is a boundary. And this is not a very strict or inflexible line even. I mean, it can shift back and forth depending on the context, the situation, and the environment you're in. But this is essentially what is yours, or what belongs to me, what I'm comfortable with, what I'm willing to do. And beyond this line is what I'm not comfortable with, what I'm not willing to do. And beyond this line is what maybe I'm being forced to do or asked to do by someone. And the idea is to, when you have a really strong sense of self, a strong sense of your preferences and your likes and dislikes, you have a certain level of respect for your own needs. It is less likely for people to push on this line, to push on your boundaries. So, for example, a common example is that there are sometimes people that want our time, or a lot of our time. Sometimes they may want to call often, or they may want to see you often, and with your routine, it might not always be possible for you to see them. So that's the part where they're sort of pushing on the boundary, because they're like, no, come on, it's just going to be a few minutes, come with me, or talk to me, or pick up my call, or you're not answering me, but it's up to us as an individual to decide how much we're okay with and how much we're not. And the distinction here is that a lot of those types of people are like boundary pushers, but if we hold on to what's important to us, what matters to us, then we can counter or respond to these boundary pushers instead of feeling overwhelmed or attacked, even because a lot of people also sometimes feel attacked by this type of pushy behavior. So a good boundary would be, for example, that you would respect the need of the other person, but you would also respect your own need. And if in that moment, let's say you don't even have any urgent work, you're just, I don't know, maybe sitting on your couch, maybe you came back home from work and you just want some time to relax, and this person keeps saying, no, but what are you really doing? In that moment, it's also important that you recognize your own need for winding down, your own need for rest, and you're able to respond in a way, in a polite but sort of clear way. You say, well, I'm sorry, but you know what? You don't even have to apologize to boundary pushers. But this is the exact problem or the challenges of being an empath, that you are too much into another person's feelings, you're too much into what they need, so you're constantly maybe overlooking what you feel. And you feel like, okay, fine, you know what? I'm just sitting here anyway. I might as well go and hear this person out. But that's the part where you have to strengthen your boundary. Because if you need rest, if you need space, if you need a moment to yourself, you're allowed to not apologize, to not cave, to not give in, and to just say, well, you know what, right now is not a good time for me. And if you're thinking about like a polite way of interacting with others about your boundary, you can always give an alternative. You can say, well, tonight or today is not a good time for me, but maybe over the weekend, or maybe whenever you have some time, you can put that in there. So that's an alternative for people. It's a choice you're giving them. And if these are normal people and they're not boundary pushers, they're most likely not going to push you and going to understand that you can be there for them in this moment. And as empaths, it can be quite difficult, although it's interesting, but it's harder for empaths to always tune in and be faithful to their own needs. And it's usually easier for us to be faithful to the needs of others. And we feel a lot of feelings when we have to enforce a boundary. We may feel guilty, we feel bad, but I think that's also something we have to overcome, the discomfort of actually going for what we want, and encountering the discomfort, knowing that it's there, and also not letting it break our boundaries with people. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, boundaries are keeping our relationships healthier, and they are bringing us further and further away from more unhealthy relationships and unhealthy relationship dynamics. So there are certain beliefs that we as empaths would have about boundaries, and I have encountered, I felt a lot of these. I would say more in the past than after I started working on myself. But for example, one thing we hear often, and it's also here in this book, it's like, if you enforce or set a boundary with people, you're selfish. We hear that a lot. And no, you're not selfish if you prioritize your own self-care, or even your own wants and needs over the others. Because if even if you want to be there for others, you can't always be there for them if you're always tired. So your help, your support will definitely be more effective if you're well rested and if you've taken care of yourself. And then here also, sometimes people or empaths, let's say, we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. So this comes in a lot when you want to say no to someone because you can't, manage to meet a friend, or you can't manage to be there for someone you care about. You're really afraid that you're going to hurt their feelings. And maybe you're also afraid that if you stand up for your own need, these people or this person will not be your friend anymore, or this person won't like you anymore. And I think this is also important to realize, that sometimes we are going to be disliked by people, and sometimes no matter what we do, we are going to be disliked. And There's also an interesting book on this topic by its Japanese author, and the title of this book is "The Courage to Be Disliked." And yes, in these moments, you do need the courage to be disliked, because not everyone is always going to love you, and this is a concept that we have to, as empaths, become more comfortable with. So hurting others and having others, hurt us is a big factor. And also some people are afraid that if you are enforcing a boundary, your friends aren't going to contact you again, or they're going to get offended. But if that's the way people react when you politely enforce your boundary, then these are probably not friends you want to be with. These are probably more toxic dynamics. And so maybe watch out for that, and don't be afraid of being left out, or of being hurt by others, or of hurting others. So in these moments, try to put yourself first. Like I said, you won't be of much help to anyone if you are exhausted. So these are some of the myths that I felt, or some of the beliefs I've personally had for a long time about boundaries, and I've pretty much overcome, if not all of them, then most of them. And the last one that really, that I think it's a hard one, maybe also for women, because people tend to label you as angry if suddenly you stand up for yourself and say, you know what, I don't want to do this right now, or I can't meet you right now, or I can't attend your call, or I can't, fulfill this request. And people tend to label you as an angry one, the one who's always angry. Or they can say, you don't relax, you don't chill enough, or you just vibe, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, just as there are beliefs that we have about boundaries, there are also a lot of boundary pushers, and these people are essentially being very manipulative when they use arguments like these to make you ignore the boundary that you have set for your relationship. So they're going to, if they start saying that you're always getting angry, can you just go with the flow, or I'm a spontaneous person. I hear this a lot too. This is also sometimes, not always, but this is also sometimes manipulative and said deliberately to make you feel like you're the uptight one, you're the one who has issues. And also, the angry label is something I think especially women maybe struggle more with, because we're called a bunch of different names if we try to stand up a bit for ourselves. I mean, especially in my culture. So, you know what? If you want to have good boundaries, you have to accept that there are boundary pushers. There are toxic and manipulative people who are going to use these excuses, who are going to call you these names and maybe label you a certain way. And in my culture, there are also like large communities of people, and a lot of people then sort of spread this idea about you among others, or among the community. I'm going to say, if you want to have healthy boundaries, just accept that there are people who are going to do this, and just accept that, you have to learn to live with it. People are going to say these things. They are going to label you different things. They would rather prefer that you don't have boundaries in the first place, and especially if you haven't had really strong boundaries in the past, then they're used to this they're used to this one person with weak boundaries. So of course they're going to object when you suddenly come and say, no, enough is enough. So you just have to get used to this, and you have to get used to people saying this, and at a certain point you have to accept that there are always going to be people who dislike you. There are always going to be people who label you, and you don't have to bother with them. I mean, that's the best way. You don't have to bother with them. This is something I'm reading online a lot, but like, they don't have to live rent free in your head. I mean, maybe you are living rent free in their head, but they don't have to live in yours. So that's it for the myths, I think, or the beliefs that we have about boundaries. I would say, ask yourself if you have any of these myths yourself, and if you don't, maybe you can ponder on these a little bit. And let me tell you that once you start drawing this line between what is you and what is them, it's much harder for manipulative people to manipulate you. It's as an empath, if you're a very sensitive person, always in tune with others' feelings, and always putting others first, and it's also easy to get manipulated by the stories people tend to tell you about themselves. But if you have healthy boundaries, then you'll be less likely to get manipulated this way. So it's also going to be healthy for you. So just ponder on this. And I wanted to dive a bit more about what it is in the beginning about the Disney villains. I was thinking of, we talked about the stepmother from the classic Disney Cinderella, and I was thinking, what other Disney villains were there who were like malignant and scarily narcissistic? I don't know. I have my computer here, so I don't know if you guys know this. If some of you were too young to even remember Cinderella, let me look up what year this Disney movie was in. It was called Rescuers. It was one of my favorite cartoons when I was growing up. It was the villain of this animation was Madame Medusa. Oh my god, I loved this cartoon. This was about these mice, and they had like I don't know, so they had like United Nations of like mice, and right where in the beginning of the film, right where the in New York, where the General Assembly for the UN is congregating, like in the cellar, in the basement somewhere there, they're all like these mice coming in from different countries, and they're congregating for their mouse, General Assembly. I don't know, I can't remember what they called it in the cartoon. So this cartoon was from 1957. It was later than Medusa, but it was really like dark vibe. And yeah, though I loved it as a child, I remember I was also scared of Medusa. She was like this red-haired woman. I'm gonna put a picture in here somewhere, where I upload this. And she was completely obsessed by this one diamond that was hidden in a mine somewhere, and on an island. And sorry if I'm getting some of the details wrong. I haven't watched this in a long time, but anyway, she was obsessed with this diamond, and what she was doing is she was getting these orphaned children. She was bringing them to her island, and she was making them go into this mine to get this diamond. Man, that was like super creepy. And she was really vain. Like she would look at her reflection, so she had like the fake lashes on, and she would put a lot of makeup. And then she finds this one girl, this small girl, who she's sure is gonna fit in this mine, and she wants her to get the diamond. And the thing about this mine is that at a particular time it fills up with water, so there's only like a short window of time in which a child can crawl in, get the diamond, come out before this entire mine floods with water from the sea. And this villain, so Medusa, she didn't care. She just wanted to send this child in there. She didn't care if this girl lived or not. She just wanted her diamond. And the way that she was getting these children was, she would go to them and she would tell them, how she just wants to be with them. She wants to make them feel good. She cares only about them, and like manipulate them into believing that she cares only about them, when at the bottom of it all, it was her own need to get the diamond, and her own like desire that she was like hiding beneath all this manipulation. And of course the children would believe her, because they wanted that. They wanted family. They wanted to feel special. And I do think Medusa was like a malignant. I mean, okay, she was a malignant narcissist, definitely. She was knowingly doing this, and there was no remorse within her at all. And when the girl or the child would fight back, she would scare them into obedience, and into getting her what she wants. And can't remember exactly what is the promise that she made to this girl apart from loving her. I think maybe she was telling this girl that she would take her back to her parents. This girl's name was Penny. Now I see it. And Penny knew at one point that this is a crazy woman, and she tried to get away from her, and she was always caught by her and her, like, she had two crocodiles, so she had these pet crocodiles, and then Penny would be afraid of them. And this diamond was called the Devil's Eye. I'm just reading it now. And right here it says she also had, and what she also had was an assistant. He was called Mr. Snoops, and he was like just stuck with Medusa. And I see all the parallels of narcissists that we know. So, for example, being vain, having really inferior sense of self, then wanting something that they believe is going to make them, better. It's going to make them look better or feel better, like using all that makeup and wanting the diamond, to have, so placing a lot of value in these material things, but like an obsessive amount of value in which they're willing to endanger and harm other people's lives, and basically no sense of empathy at all to an orphan's, a child's pain or fear. Just me. That was Medusa. And she also had then her two crocodiles, who were pretty much like the flying monkeys in this case, who she was just using to bully and scare people into obeying her. And then of course Mr. Snoops is her assistant, is a total enabler, because although he knows what she's doing on an intrinsic level, he knows that, okay, this is crazy, because he himself could not force Penny to get this diamond, so he knew it intrinsically, but he couldn't stand up to Medusa, and he was just enabling her behavior. He knew how scary it was for the child, with the crocodiles, and it was also, he himself was afraid of them, and he couldn't force Penny to do what Medusa asked her to do, but at the same time he wasn't doing anything to help her, and that's a classic enabler here. And basically, obviously, since it was a Disney cartoon made for kids, Penny does manage to get away. She is rescued by these mice, who are running all these operations around the world to help children. And so they came and they joined forces with the other animals in the swamp, where Medusa was, where this mine was, and they managed to get Penny away. In the end, they managed to rescue her, and it's an adorable cartoon. It's just really, it was one of my favorite cartoons, like I said, when I was growing up, and this Medusa villain was, I think, one of the best Disney villains, and in a cartoon for kids, moreover, it was really scary to watch her as a kid, but also growing up, you can see some of the parallels with people that you come across in society in general. I mean, of course, as a kid, she appears scary, but they're all types of people in the world, and a lot of people are doing crazy things. So, I mean, the portrayal is not too unreal, I would say. In any case, I wanted to discuss more Disney villains, but I think I've had a long enough discussion about Medusa. I'm gonna call it an end for this episode for this week, and like I always say, let me know what you think. Let me just share your comments with me. Let me know if you even watched this cartoon. It's really old, but it's really one of the best Disney cartoons in my opinion. And let me know what you think overall. I'm gonna take the week and figure out what we want to do in next week's episode, but I think I'm definitely gonna talk about boundaries a bit more. And there are a couple of other things and other villains I want to discuss in their personalities, because I think it really helps to understand like narcissistic people and their personalities when you have certain examples to play around with. So I'm going to bring more of that in our next episodes, hopefully. And I hope this was a fun one for you. See you next week, and have a great day.